I never imagined that a simple afternoon in the garden would lead to one of the most thrilling adventures of my life. It all started on a warm summer's day, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky, casting long shadows over the grass, and the air is filled with the scent of blooming flowers. My friend, Ben, and I were in my grandmother's garden, an old, sprawling place that had been in the family for generations. We had spent countless hours there as children, playing hide and seek, climbing the ancient oak tree, and exploring every nook and cranny. On that particular day, we decided to do something different. "Let's dig," Ben suggested, his eyes gleaming with the kind of mischievous excitement that I couldn't resist. We had no specific plan in mind, it was just a whim, a way to pass the time. We grabbed a couple of rusty shovels from the old shed, and after a bit of deliberation, we chose a spot near the edge of the garden, where the earth looked soft and inviting. As we dug, we talked about everything and nothing, school, life, our plans for the future. The rhythmic sound of the shovels hitting the dirt was almost meditative. After about an hour, just as we were considering giving up, Ben's shovel struck something hard. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. I nodded, my heart starting to race. We both knelt down and began digging with our hands, carefully brushing away the dirt until we uncovered what looked like an old, metal box. It was about the size of a shoebox, covered in rust and dirt, but despite its age, it was surprisingly intact. "It's a time capsule," I whispered, hardly daring to believe it. We had heard stories about time capsules, containers buried in the ground, filled with objects and messages meant to be discovered by future generations. But I had never actually seen one, let alone found one. Ben's eyes were wide with excitement. "Let's open it." We pried the lid off with some effort, and inside, we found an assortment of items, a faded photograph, a few old coins, a newspaper clipping, and, most intriguingly, a sealed envelope. The envelope was yellowed with age, and the handwriting on the front was elegant and precise. It read, "To the finders of this capsule." I felt a shiver of anticipation as I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, also aged and fragile, with a message written in the same neat handwriting. The message read, "To those who discover this capsule, you have found more than just a collection of old relics. You have uncovered a mystery that has been waiting for decades to be solved. If you choose to accept this challenge, you must follow the clues carefully, for they will lead you to something far more valuable than you can imagine. The first clue lies in the photograph you have found. Look closely, and you will see the hidden message. This is where your journey begins. Good luck." A friend from the past. I looked up at Ben, who was grinning from ear to ear. "This is incredible," he said, his voice full of excitement. "We have to solve this mystery." I couldn't agree more. My heart was pounding with a mixture of excitement and curiosity. Who had buried this capsule? And what was the mystery they were talking about? We both knew there was no turning back now. The adventure had already begun. We turned our attention to the photograph. It was a black and white image of a group of people standing in front of a large, old house. They were dressed in clothes from what looked like the early 20th century, women in long dresses and men in suits and hats. There were about 10 people in the photo, and they all had serious expressions on their faces. Do you see anything unusual? I asked, squinting at the photo. Ben shook his head. Not really. It just looks like an old family photo. But I wasn't so sure. There was something about the way the people in the photo were standing, something about their expressions that seemed off. I took a closer look, trying to focus on the details. And then, I saw it. In the background, almost hidden among the trees, there was a faint outline of something, a shape that didn't quite fit with the rest of the scene. Look at this, I said, pointing to the spot. Ben leaned in closer, and his eyes widened. Is that a symbol? He asked. It was indeed a symbol, a small, barely visible shape that looked like a combination of a star and a crescent moon. It was so faint that it was easy to miss, but once you saw it, it was unmistakable. What do you think it means? I asked, feeling a thrill of discovery. Ben frowned thoughtfully. It must be the first clue. Maybe it's connected to a place or an object. We need to figure out where we've seen this symbol before. We spent the next hour scouring the garden, looking for anything that matched the symbol in the photograph. We searched the old house, the trees, even the stone walls that lined the property. But nothing seemed to match. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the garden, we started to lose hope. Maybe we're missing something, Ben said, his voice tinged with frustration. Maybe it's not in the garden at all. I was about to agree when something caught my eye. On the side of the old oak tree, where the bark had been worn smooth by years of weather and time, I saw it, the same symbol, carved into the wood. Ben, over here. I called out. He rushed over, and together we examined the carving. It was crude, almost as if it had been made in a hurry, but it was definitely the same symbol. This must be the next clue, Ben said, excitement returning to his voice. But what does it mean? I ran my fingers over the carving, trying to make sense of it. And then, almost as if by instinct, I looked down at the base of the tree. There, partially hidden by roots and earth, was a small, metal box. Another one? Ben exclaimed. This box was smaller than the first, but it was just as old. With trembling hands, I opened it, revealing another piece of paper. This one was even more faded and fragile, but the message was still legible. You have done well to find this clue. But your journey is far from over. The next step will require courage and wit. You must go to the place where the sun sets and the water flows. There, you will find the key to the next part of the mystery. Be warned, this path is not without danger. Trust only those who prove themselves worthy, and keep your wits about you. The past holds many secrets, but only the brave will uncover the truth. A friend from the past. I stared at the message, my mind racing. The place where the sun sets and the water flows. It sounded poetic, but what did it actually mean? The river! Ben exclaimed, snapping his fingers. It has to be the river. It's where the sun sets in the west, and it's the only body of water nearby. It made sense. The river was just beyond the garden, a place we had visited countless times as children. But something about the warning in the message made me uneasy. This was no longer just a game or a simple treasure hunt. There was a sense of seriousness, even danger, that hung over us now. Are you sure we should do this? I asked, glancing at Ben. He looked back at me, his expression determined. We've come this far. We can't back out now. Besides, don't you want to know what the secret is? I nodded, realizing he was right. My curiosity was too strong to ignore, and despite my fears, I wanted to see this through to the end. We packed a small bag with essentials, flashlights, a map, some snacks, and headed towards the river. The walk took about 20 minutes, and by the time we arrived, the sun was dipping low in the sky, casting a fiery glow over the water. The river was a wide, slow-moving body of water, bordered by thick trees and undergrowth. It was peaceful and quiet, the only sound being the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. Where do we start? I asked, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Ben unfolded the map and studied it carefully. The message said to go where the sun sets, so we should head west, along the riverbank. We followed the river, keeping an eye out for anything unusual. The forest around us grew denser, the trees casting long shadows that made it difficult to see. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and every rustle of leaves made my heart jump. After what felt like an eternity, we came to a clearing where the trees parted, revealing a small, rocky beach. The sun was now just a sliver on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. This has to be the place, Ben said, his voice hushed with anticipation. We scanned the area, looking for any sign of the next clue. But there was nothing, just rocks, sand, and the slow-moving water. Doubt began to creep in. Had we misinterpreted the message? Were we even in the right place? Just as I was about to voice my concerns, Ben pointed to something near the water's edge. There! Do you see it? I followed his gaze and saw what he was pointing at, a small, weathered stone, half buried in the sand. It had the same symbol carved into it, faint but unmistakable. We rushed over and began digging around the stone, our hands moving frantically as we unearthed what lay beneath. After a few minutes, we uncovered another box, this one larger and more ornate than the others. It was made of wood, with intricate carvings covering its surface, and it was locked. How do we open it? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. Ben examined the box carefully. There's a keyhole, but no key. I felt a wave of disappointment. We had come so far, only to be stopped by a simple lock. But then I remembered the second message, the one that mentioned a key. The place where the sun sets and the water flows. Could it be that the key was somewhere nearby? We began searching the area frantically, overturning rocks, digging in the sand, even wading into the water. But there was no sign of a key. Exhausted and discouraged, we sat down on the beach, watching as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon. The air was cool now, and the sky was— I don't understand, I said, my voice heavy with defeat. We followed the clues, but we still can't open the box. Ben was silent for a moment, lost in thought. Then, he looked up at me, a strange expression on his face. What if the key isn't a literal key? I frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? He pointed to the box. Look at the carvings. They're not just decorative, they're a pattern, a sequence. What if the key is a code, something we have to figure out? It was a wild idea, but it made sense. We had been thinking too literally, too narrowly. The whole mystery had been about thinking outside the box, looking for hidden meanings. Why should this be any different? We examined the carvings closely, tracing the patterns with our fingers. The designs were intricate, a series of swirling lines and geometric shapes that seemed to flow into one another. After a few minutes of studying the patterns, Ben suddenly exclaimed, "I think I've got it." He pointed to a section of the carvings where the lines formed a sequence of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a combination. We just need to figure out the order. Excitement surged through me as we began experimenting with different combinations, turning the small dials on the side of the box that we hadn't noticed before. It took several tries, but finally, with a satisfying click, the box unlocked. We opened it slowly, almost reverently, and inside, we found a small, leather-bound book. It was old, the pages yellowed with age, but it was clearly well preserved. The cover was embossed with the same symbol we had been following all along. I opened the book to the first page, where there was a handwritten note. To those who have found this book, you have proven yourselves worthy of the knowledge contained within. This book holds the history of a secret society that has existed for centuries, a society dedicated to protecting the world's most ancient and powerful secrets. You have been chosen to carry on this legacy, to become the guardians of knowledge that must never fall into the wrong hands. The journey you have begun today is just the beginning. If you choose to accept this responsibility, you will be granted access to a world that few have ever known. But be warned, with great knowledge comes great danger. There are those who will stop at nothing to obtain what you now possess. You must be vigilant, wise, and brave. The choice is yours. A friend from the past. As I read the note, a shiver ran down my spine. This was no ordinary mystery. We had stumbled upon something far bigger, something that could change our lives forever. Ben looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. What do we do now? I closed the book, feeling the weight of the decision before us. This was not a choice to be made lightly. But as I thought about the journey we had already taken, the challenges we had faced, and the bond we had strengthened, I knew there was only one answer. We continue, I said firmly. We accept the responsibility. We solve the mystery, protect the knowledge, and face whatever comes our way. Ben nodded, a determined smile on his face. Together. And so, our adventure continued, with the book in our hands and a new sense of purpose guiding us. We didn't know what lay ahead, but we were ready to face it, side by side. The past had called out to us, and we had answered. Now, the future was ours to shape, one mystery at a time.